Welcome to the June 12th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for our invocation and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the many blessings you've given each and every one of us here in the city of Troy. We ask that you continue to bless us and be with us as we work through this evening's agenda here at the City Council table, as we work as a city and a community to come together on many, many issues that face our city. We ask that you be with our first responders and keep them safe and recognize they're doing the good work of our community for our residents' health and safety and welfare as well. We ask that you be with all of those who need your help, especially those who may be unable or unwilling to ask for it, knowing that they need just as much support and guidance as well. We ask that you bless us always. In his name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll call the June 12th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting to order, and I'll ask for the roll call from Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Gall?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton? Councilmember Hoderick?
Here, but remote.
We do have quorum this evening, but there are two council members who are not here present in the chamber. I did receive notification from Councilmember Hamilton and Councilmember Hoderick that they'd be unable to attend in person this evening. Councilmember Hoderick will appear virtually, but she will be a non-voting member of council and is only here for discussion purposes only. So I will move the resolution resolved that Troy City Council hereby excuses the absences of Councilmember Ellen Hoderick and Councilmember David Hamilton, both from the special City Council meeting of June 12, 2023 that we had at 6 p.m. and this regular City Council meeting of June 12, 2023 due to being unavailable and out of the county.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga, that we approve the excused absences of Councilmember Hamilton and Councilmember Hoderick. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Gall?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have two presentations this evening. First up is C1, a presentation to the Mayor and City Council for the 2023 OPA Fest by members from St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church. And we have with us this evening Michaela Lizas, Eve Feles, Alexandra Alioto, and Antonio Alioto. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor Baker. Hello, council members. We want to invite all of you and all the community members as well to our 30th annual OPA Fest. Our festival started in 1993 as a dream with our current priest at the time and a couple of city council members, and we grew it into now what it is today. Again, we're celebrating 30 years. It is this weekend, so June 16th, 17th, and 18th. Friday and Saturday is 4 o'clock to 11 p.m. And then Sunday, is 12 to 8 p.m. We have anything you can think of. We have, as you can see here, we'll have ethnic Greek dancers. We have Greek food, chef cook-offs, church tours, a cultural exhibit, kids games, a market to purchase items at. And yeah, it should be a great weekend. So we brought some sweets we'd like to share with you guys and hope to see you all there.
Awesome, thank you. It is a great community event and look forward to attending again this year. And we used to have tables up here, but they're gone. So I think if you hand the treats to Ms. Stewart back there, she'll make sure they get properly distributed. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Have a great festival.
Thank you as well.
Next up is C2, an economic development report, and that'll be presented by our economic development manager, Mark Adams. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before I get started, I just want to say that this particular presentation on what I've been doing as part of the Troy Economic Development Team covers a little bit of some of the fundamentals that's always been here for Troy. And I'm adding some things based upon my experience from a business attraction standpoint. It's a little bit of that in this presentation also. But overall, it represents teamwork, and I think that's very important. I know one thing that Mark Miller looked at this, and I was using the word I. When I was going to do my presentation, I was going to use we, but I'm using we now, and we is in the presentation. But it's really a combination, and I guess this probably should be said more often than not, is that you work together with the mayor, city council, city manager, assistant city manager, deputy city manager. I don't see Brent here, Kurt, and I'm probably missing a few others. But really, it's a team approach, so I want to make sure that that's perfectly clear. One of the first tenets of economic development, at least in most plans, not all, is business retention. It's always important to work with your existing businesses. It's great to always have, one in the hand versus two in the bush. That's a saying that really makes sense when you talk about trying to retain your existing businesses in a community. Over the past few months, I've been working with some of these companies, and I listed it here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it just gives an idea of trying to make sure that what you have here stays here. But more so than not, I think it's a misnomer out there when you say business retention. Because really, when you say business retention, a lot of times when you're working to keep a business here, expand the business here, or bring a new product line here, you may already have the business here, and you call it business retention. But if you go out to Ontario, Canada, or if you go out to Germany, some of these companies have operations there. Some of them have them throughout the United States. And what happens is that you have an executive here that wants that new product line. So he's competing against the other state, the other country, to get that product line here. So it's an expansion if you get it, and it's attraction because you're bringing it in. So you see in the paper a lot of times, you hear about the state and the county and the regional partnership going out and talking to businesses in other countries and other states, and you think, oh, it's just business attraction. They're not worried about the existing businesses here. That's not the case. Most of the time, it's really working with an existing business that's here to bring that product here so it can expand. And then when you talk about business retention, well, what do you do when you go out and talk to a business? Sometimes a business isn't aware of the types of services that the city can offer. I know Troy is excellent with his planning department and moving with the speed of business to get them a permit. But more so than that, the big issue now is workforce. Across industries right now, they can't find it. And it's difficult. I don't be Pollyannish about it. It's hard to find workers. There's just no doubt about it. But we have a Michigan Works office to make sure that they're aware of that can help them with recruiting employees. Also, they can help them with training. They have special programs that I make them aware of. And then also, some of these firms within Troy are looking for sites. And that's very difficult right now. And you'll see in some slides coming up how difficult it really is, especially in the industrial market right now. So a company would ask me, well, do you have a 10,000 square foot building or a 20,000? And I would do a search and send it to them to try to keep them here in Troy. But again, it's very difficult because it's very limited product for the industrial market right now here in the United States, not just Michigan, not just Eastern Michigan. It's all over the place. So I provide that service to those businesses when they call in for that. And then at other times, a business may be looking to expand, purchase some equipment, purchase a building somewhere, and a lot of times they may not have the right ratios or the right amount of money to purchase that piece of equipment or building. And I talk about the SBA 504 program. That's a program that Oakland County manages, where they can come in at 40% of the project costs and help that business purchase that equipment or that building. They take a second position to the bank. It's probably a pretty good interest rate that they would get. But when you look at the ratios over a 3-year period, to pay back the loan, you'll see, because they're in the second position, it's more favorable for the business. And the same information that the business would need when they go to the bank is the same thing that Oakland County needs to do their financial analysis. Also, the state of Michigan has something what they call Pure Michigan Business Connect. And that's a portal where businesses can work with one another, and also they have an opportunity to possibly get grants from other businesses in the state of Michigan. And that's been very beneficial. Some of the major corporations have committed millions of dollars to that particular program over the years. So those are some of the types of services that I talk about when I go out and talk to a business. And some of them are in need of it right now, but most of the time they're not. But at least they know it's available and know where to go when they do need it. And that's important, to go out and talk to businesses and make sure that they're aware of that. Business attraction. You know, Troy, I think, speaks to what is the hot industry right now when you talk about mobility firms. And when I talk about mobility firms, I'm talking about electric, hybrid, autonomous, all that fits Troy business profile. Also, you know, financial services, advanced manufacturing, those things are targeted. So when I participate with the state, the region, or the county, those are the types of firms I'm looking for the city of Troy. And really, as I said earlier, when I talked about business retention, expansion, and attraction, and how they're all interrelated, when you work with the county and the state and the region, that's the message that, you know, I'm presenting about Troy. You know, we have opportunities where your business can grow. And, you know, I respond to RFPs from the state of Michigan and from the Detroit Regional Partnership. And I don't think that's something that Troy was really doing before. Because of my previous connections, I'm still on the contact list to where I get those proposals. And where it makes sense for Troy, I will respond to them. And then also, I'm talking about some of the sites that I provided to some of these industries right here. That's in Troy. And it's a mixture. The first one is from Australia, and I got one from China up there. And then some of the previous companies that I mentioned, they were from Canada. So it's a mixture. You know, Troy has a lot of foreign firms. Now, a lot of times we get into projects, and sometimes the projects have a code name. And some of the code names, you know, it sounds kind of funny when you think about it, Project Goldfinger or Project Moonshot, and then that's Project Nero. But they give them those code names because these companies want confidentiality. And a lot of times when you get into a situation where a company wants confidentiality, that shows that they're serious and that we're competing for a project. And I just have an example of one potential project up there. The numbers are probably going to change on it because of the interest rate right now. A lot of companies are cutting back, but basically, it's a competitive situation where we're looking at another state or another country, and we're competing together. So I'm working with the state, I'm working with the county. Sometimes I'm the lead person on it, sometimes one of those other agencies is the lead person on it. And it's a business case that you have to present for their grant program, which is called the Michigan Business Development Program. And basically, that grant program is based on the industry that you're in, the amount of investment, and the number of jobs, and your wage rate. Those are the 4 factors. And so what I'm able to do is really explain that to a company and how to position themselves in order to work with the state of Michigan in order to get a proposal back for a grant. Also, local buy-in is very important. And a lot of times, our local buy-in right now would be how quickly we can get them into a building or some type of permit that they may need, and that would suffice. But again, I think it's an industry that, you know, Troy would want to work with, and that's very important. So currently, I have a few outstanding projects out there that's under consideration has offer letters out there right now. But in the past, in my previous life, when I handled site selection for Oakland County over 15 years, I want to give concrete examples, because sometimes you hear about economic development and people say, well, what is that? What are you doing? What type of skill set do you have? Well, it's relationship building. That's one of the key things, but also it's knowing the programs. You know, the state has various programs where they work with incentives, and sometimes they're using your personal income tax when it was 4.25% under the MEGA program. So I'm able to explain that, you know, what's a tax abatement and how are the taxes frozen. What is a PA 210 when you could freeze it for over 10 years and there's no increase and you set up a district? Those are the types of things that I add. That's my value add to a project. And that's how I work on it, to build the business case for Troy. You know, I talk about that, and I talk about Molina, and it's not that I'm creating any jobs or Troy is creating any jobs. It's the business persons that's creating the jobs and the investment. That's true. And it's not like they were going to go somewhere or not happen if they didn't get the grant program. But where we add value is that we wanted to see that investment happen in Troy. So you build that relationship. You know what your community has to offer. And when I worked with Stephen Harris, and that may be somebody a name that you recognize here, he's no longer with Molina. He's now the CEO of Blue Cross and Blue Shield for Illinois. But at that time, he was the CEO for Molina here in Troy. And the decision wasn't made with him. The decision was made with their real estate executive from California. And all this happened well before Troy was involved in it, before they moved to 880 Long Lake Road. But, of course, the project would not have happened without the assistance of Mark Miller and the Economic Development Department here in Troy when any of those things happen. So that's a concrete example of how you work with real estate people that may not be here locally, that you build sort of a picture of what southeastern Michigan can offer, and then you drill down to the local community. I have other examples like that, like NS International. That's one of my favorite ones that I probably mentioned too many times, but again, they were going to locate somewhere in southeastern Michigan, not necessarily Troy. And Troy did come out as the winner, but it was a couple of communities here that were very, very close. But the reason why I mentioned that for the small businesses that are here in Troy, because it's very important, because that was a driver for those two hotels to go up there. And then also their employees, not just NS International, but I can mention several other businesses. You know, they're going to the restaurants, they're going to the gas stations, they're going to the retail. That's very important when you talk about economic development, that spillover effect of that. So I want to emphasize how not just working with the bigger businesses, but when you work with them, it helps the smaller businesses also. And I think most of you have seen this, maybe some of you haven't, but this is the marketing piece that the content that I worked on, but Stephanie designed it and put it together. Again, you talk about the team approach, but I'm not going to go over it, but I've got very good feedback from that. And one of the things that I really, really like that I point out, other people have pointed out to me, is location, location, location. And in there, I have, I may be pretty close. I have Troy is, 4.5 hours from Chicago and 4.5 hours from Toronto, which is really a good point, when you think about it, and the access to all of those markets. But then it talks about some important things that Troy is known for, the great quality of place, the educated workforce, the restaurants that you can go to. All of those are factors when you're trying to retain employees and recruit employees into your community, and it really speaks to that in this particular marketing piece. And also, it talks about the international flavor of the city of Troy. And then these are some of the innovation and mobility centers that I know the mayor and some of the council members have attended over the past 4 or 5 months. And I'm going to give a shout out to Cindy. She does a lot of work with these. And again, it's that team approach, but it shows that because of what Troy is known for and constantly marketing, some of this is organic. They're going to come here because you have the type of qualities that these types of businesses are looking for. And site selection guild. I went to a meeting in Texas, and site selection people from all over the United States and internationally. And why it's important to talk to those people is that I like to use leverage. And what I mean by that is that these folks are representing a lot of corporations, mid-sized, large corporations, not just the mammoth corporation, a lot of mid-sized corporations. And what that allows me to do is tell the story of Troy, all the things that I've been mentioning right now. So if they see an opportunity with one of their clients, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to compete. And I mentioned the real estate executive from Molina as one example, but also the incentive practice of some of these accounting firms. I worked with a lot with some of the, I would say, the top 4 accounting firms here in southeastern Michigan, and probably the top 3 or 4 law firms. I traveled with them and put on presentations with them to talk about opportunities in southeastern Michigan. And why that's important, again, is that they may have clients or they may have opportunities to where they can say, hey, Mark, I need you to do this. And I'm willing to do that because I want the opportunity to compete for any type of business opportunity. And I just give one example up there of an accounting firm that contacted me that talked about a confidential client that was either looking to add employees to Troy or relocate. So I send them the marketing information and talked about, some of the things that we can do to make it a success here in Troy. And then, I mentioned that it's important to pitch and not just sit back and catch. And what I mean by that, sometimes you got to go out there and get it. You just can't wait for the business to come in. It's great when the business come in, but I think you have to have that approach too. You have to be aggressive. And with some of these accounting firms, how do they find out about a business that's looking to expand? A lot of times they're going in and doing some type of audit or some other work. And what they do is they say, hey, we have this incentive practice here in our firm, and I see that you're looking to expand. We can help you do that. And so when I get to know those people know what I can do and how I understand the incentive programs, and they contacted me. And I could tell you, North American Bay Card, CareTech, if you remember that, before HTC purchased them, that came out of that. And that came through those types of relationships that I had with those accounting firms. But again, it's a team approach. They wouldn't be here in Troy without it, but believe me, they had opportunities to go anywhere. And you talk about real estate trends, and it's sort of a little sliding scale, but I think this is pretty accurate right now, where it talks about the types of vacancy we have. And really what I want to concentrate on is One of the site consultants, the National Incentive Site Consultant for CBRE, he gave a presentation where he said during COVID, 90% of the sales was industrial, warehouse, 10% office. And even right now, he was saying that it's about 80% industrial warehouse and 20% office. That shows the lack of product that we really have to work with and how difficult it is. It just highlights that. And then it highlights the necessity, when appropriate and functionally viable, to convert that office to residential. And the reason why that is important is the next slide I'm going to get to, where we talk about our TIF boards. And again, a lot of you are a part of that in one way or another, or the council will hear about the site plan or the project presentation. So I won't go into too much detail about that, but what I want to say is that, that's one of the building blocks, one of the foundations of Troy, the great work that they do with Kurt and the DDA and what we're doing right now with Brent, and when he works with these housing developers that's looking at brownfields, and then we come into play. And of course, through Mark's leadership and the mayor and council, we work together to bring that type of investment into Troy. And when you think about it, when you have a piece of property that is just sitting there and you want to have a good adaptive reuse of it, and it may be assessed at $500,000, and then 4 years from now, it's assessed at $37 million. You can't beat that. That's a great project. And we have some of those. So basically, the economic best practice system, just a part of it, it's not everything that's there, is that, we have instituted a customer relationship management system called Salesforce, and then the site database, CPEX. And both of those are assisting me in my daily job here in Troy, to keep track of things and also to be able to produce buildings for companies when we have something available. And what I want to close out with is that, of course, the entire team here, everybody I mentioned before, we're always answering questions one way or another. It could be permitting, licenses, or other things. But, Troy has a great small business base, a great mid-system business base, and a great large company base. And I think that's very important for all three. And I think when you think about what's been here for Troy over the years and what we're trying to do now and bring new investment in, it shows that Troy does have the ability to punch above its weight. And that's something that I've said several times before also. So with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craneга.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for that update and all the work you've been up to. So 2 questions. First, it was kind of helpful to hear what kind of questions you get from different businesses as you're pitching or they're looking to come to Troy. Besides, them asking about the ease of getting city permits, you mentioned that, or secondly, is there actually the office space, the size that they need? What are other questions they might ask about Troy in the area when they're deciding? Meaning, are they asking about our housing stock or other things that come to mind?
Well, talent is really the main thing. Do you have talent here? And I referenced that, Troy does have a very educated workforce. And then I do talk about housing because that's a component of getting talent in. But then I talk about that Troy draws from the southeastern Michigan, just not from Troy itself. So you open that market up and say, hey, we have about 5,000 engineers graduating from this particular region. And again, I don't be Pollyannish about it. It's difficult to find workers now, even with that. But I think it gives us a slight edge over some of the other communities when you can mention those types of things.
Excellent. Okay, so second question is, coming out of the Mackinac Policy Conference, everyone was talking about the governor, her just concern around population, setting up a commission, looking at population. And out of that, people talked about the competition we have with Sunshine States. So wondering, do you ever run into that when you're in these national business seminars and you're pitching with others? Are you finding that that's true, that businesses, they want to locate to kind of the sunny areas? And kind of with that, kind of the second question relating to what the governor is thinking about in terms of like the future of Michigan and growing, because it's growing our population, but it's growing our economy, is my workplace, Kresge Foundation, hosted a session at Mackinac with Richard Florida, who's a premier thinker on cities, and he talked about the future of places like Ann Arbor and being all the more technology hubs. They already are, but all the more. But I was thinking, what about Troy? I mean, we have universities here as well, from Walsh, and Michigan State has a center here. So wondering, there was a lot of talk about the governor and state of Michigan vision, wondering what you're hearing in terms of how we compete with the Sunshine States, and in terms of even our potential as to be a real kind of technology hub, because I see that and I believe that we are.
Well, at times I do run in that. It's the weather in California and Florida, and then it's the number of universities that they have on the East Coast also. So you hear those, but to the extent that I combat it and where it really makes sense is that I would say that, our cost of living is a little bit lower here in the Midwest, and that's a factor. When you talk about housing, I said you can get a house with a basement, and a backyard for $200,000, and it's $2 million. Probably on the East Coast somewhere or West Coast, and that makes a difference. Then I also talk about our industry base, because no matter what, if you can't make money, it doesn't make sense to locate someplace. And a lot of times people are unaware of the types of industries that we have here. So I go into what industries we have here and say, hey, are you doing business with them? And they may say yes. And that may be another opportunity for them to be here. And, it's a lot of competition out there. It's something called the I-75 corridor that goes all the way down to Georgia. And they're getting a lot of the manufacturing plants right now. Very, very competitive. And we got a lot of the engineering centers, and we want to keep them. So it's a lot of competition, but I think right now Michigan is holding its own water.
Thank you. Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Wonderful presentation. A lot of great information. Regarding the vacancy rates, I saw you had the comparison with 2019. It's not surprising that vacancies are higher now for offices. Do we have a sense of what the trend is now or is going to be for our office vacancy?
That's a very difficult question, and that comes up just about at every economic development forum that you can think of, and nobody really has the exact answer to that. I think it's still being decided whether or not people are going to continue to work at home at the rate that they're working at home. I don't think it's ever going away, but you're seeing an increase of workers coming back in at least a few days out of the week. Another way to combat that right now is that you're seeing, when again it's functionally viable to do, that you're converting office to residential. So I think you're going to continue to see those types of trends. And then also I think that when you have a Class A office building with all the amenities, those types of facilities aren't hurting. What's hurting is the lower class buildings. That's where you're getting a lot of the vacancy at. So the higher end, the newer buildings, I think they're doing a little bit better than the older ones. So I think for right now, those are the types of answers that you get. And one other question that you had, you talk about Michigan losing a congressional seat. And, one of the pushes is for housing, and Troy is doing a lot of that through the Brownfield program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. We have no carryover items or public hearings, so move on to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 2 people signed up this evening. As a reminder, you're given 3 minutes each. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when it turns red, your time is up. So first up on the list is Graham Bush.
So, hello again, everybody. It's I-75 noise time. Today, I'm just going to say 2 things, or 2 simple things. First of all, Meg, thank you very much for whatever work you're doing. Okay, thank you for your support, all of you. We are trying to move this forward, so that's number 1. Second thing is, I think, Ethan, you perhaps spoke to Lorraine or something, a little bit of a clarification as to what work is being proposed for the $10 million. Essentially, we've got noise all the way down the freeway. They've built a noisier road. They've used older technologies, different technologies. The whole road is noisy, but their calculation method has said only 2 areas are going to be addressed. Noise walls do work to a certain amount, as long as you don't leave gaps where the bridges go over the mile roads, because then the noise just goes through the gap. So the key thing is noise walls can work. They tend to work only for the properties nearest to the house, to the freeway. Noise will basically bend over the top, it diffracts, it cascades a long way. So the major effect of a noise wall is near to the road, okay? So they will help those who are the most severely affected. The problem is all of the other areas that aren't being considered, because the calculation method which MDOT use, which is derived from the federal method, which was originally improved in 1997, so it's over 25 years old, right, disqualifies certain areas purely because there aren't enough people living right next to the freeway. And you've heard me talk about Houghton Acres. There are no houses within 500 feet. You could build the noisiest freeway on the planet. Houghton Acres will never, ever get any mitigation because there's no way under the method of calculation to actually give them that, okay? So all I'm trying to say is, and again, thanks for everything that you're doing, is this isn't going to stop because basically, yes, if we get the $10 million approved, if we get some initial building work approved, the residents can go and measure noise, see how much it is, but the other areas are still suffering. They're all suffering. So all I can say is it's part of a longer process. It won't just stop this year or this budgetary year. We will, unfortunately, as a council, as a team, as residents, have to continue to work on that again and again and again to help everybody out. And that's me done. 17 seconds for questions, if there are any.
Graham, you know it doesn't work that way, but thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. And again, thanks for your support.
Thank you. All right, next up is Fred Eckhout.
Mayor, City Council, good evening. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Graham had to say, but in addition to that, we met with Representative McDonald last Monday. She indicated that funding for the 2 new Troy sound walls is under discussion in Lansing and hopefully will be secured in the near future. However, these walls will do nothing for the noise in Beach Forest, Hickory Heights Woods, Middlesex, and other subdivisions. There is no known solution for these subdivisions. Mayor Baker, at the May 22nd City Council meeting, you indicated having a discussion with Congresswoman Stevens right after the April MDOT presentation. The conversation included a discussion about the problematic federal rules. Congresswoman Stevens said she was going to work with her Washington team to get a commission together to work on the rules and thought there was support from other congressional districts across the country. You were planning to follow up with her. You also indicated reaching out to the Transportation Secretary. Could you please update us on your discussions with any of the federal representatives and any planned problem resolutions that might be in the works? Thank you.
That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for council or administration to respond or reply. I'll jump in really quick just as I was asked a question right there. I have followed up since with Congresswoman Stevens, and I don't want to speak for her directly, but the conversations continue, especially as it relates to another member of Congress in Texas who is facing a similar issue. So she's hoping to partner with him on this issue. In some respect, it's a slow Washington problem, one of many they're having, and that's kind of all I have at this moment from that perspective. But I would encourage all of you to reach out to her office as well and keep pushing that ball forward in that respect. As for what you said, Graham, I appreciate all those comments and some of the clarification. I know there's a lot of different neighborhoods involved, a lot of different people involved, and funding for two sections does something, but it doesn't solve the problem for many others who live in the city as well. And I appreciate the work you're all doing to keep the topic front and center, not just with us, recognizing our limited role, but also with the state representatives and federal as well. So keep up the good work in that respect. Any additional? All right. There are no postponed items this evening. We move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening or city council appointments. I-2 is board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening, and it's my understanding there are no city council nominations either. There's no request for closed session this evening, so we move on to I-4, 2023 City Council meeting schedule. That'll be introduced by our Deputy City Manager, Bob Bruner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last City Council meeting on May 22nd, the draft master plan was presented to City Council for public release. Before doing that, City Council discussed the potentially holding a special meeting to discuss the draft master plan further. And so city staff's proposing that City Council schedule that special meeting 2 weeks from today on Monday, June 26th at 6 p.m. Prior to the regular meeting at 7:30 that night.
Very good. Any questions? I'll move I-4, 2023 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I-4, 2023 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes, motion carries. Next up is I-5, Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Troy Civic Center Pavilion Construction, and Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, Approval to Expend Budgeted Funds, Pavilion Construction Administration, and Budget Amendment. That'll be introduced by our Public Works Director, Kirk Bovensieper.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Finally before you for hopefully an award to the contractor. No fancy presentation tonight, but I do want to highlight a couple important dates as we progress through this project. Back in May of 2022, Council did approve a contract with OHM to work on that schematic design. So it took the concept really and did a feasibility study and looked at the placement of the entire project. On August 22nd, City Council approved a contract with OHM Advisors to begin the detailed design. During that presentation, we did go over that opinion of cost. It was higher than we originally anticipated, and that continued on through the through the presentation when I announced in March of 2023 when we had actually put this out for award, but we had some funding issues with HUD and we had to go through some additional steps. So we are continue on track with the opinion of cost that was announced back in August of 2022. We were successful in obtaining the permit for Eagle. We do have some floodplain and some wetland delineated wetland that will be impacting. We worked, as I mentioned before, we worked through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is the community project funding, what that is being funded through that department. So that required us to do some additional environmental work, and we were successful in that. We have completed all of our public announcements and gone through all of our processes to make sure that anyone who had opportunity to provide comment on the project has had that opportunity, and we have not had any, so HUD has officially released the funding. This project was a little unique because it's one project, but we did hire a contractor in the very beginning, Service. It was important when we went out to bid that we recognized that whoever we were going to recommend to City Council for award, that they had experience in working with companies like Service and performing those works. So whenever you have two contractors working side by side to meet a common deadline, it's important to have some familiarity with each other. Through the request for a proposal, we were very specific on determining their qualifications, their background and experience, if they have the available workload, methods used to value engineer the project to make sure that we are still getting the best value for what we're trying to achieve. As I mentioned, relationship to the major subcontractor and trades, and probably personally, one of the most important, because it is such a high-profile project for the city, is examples of how the firm became community partners in other projects that they performed. On February 9th, 2023, we did open the bid, and we did go through an interview process, and we are recommending C.E. Gleason for the official award to be the general contractor on this project, and OHM Advisors, who has, of course, been intimate with this project throughout the entire process, to do the contract administration. We are asking for a budget amendment. However, I would like to take a minute to explain that. Funds are budgeted in the 2024 for this project. However, for accounting purposes, we have to encumber all of the funds this fiscal year since we're starting before July 1. So it is going to require a budget amendment this year. It will not impact the 2024 budget that council approved. So the dollar value has not changed, but for accounting purposes, we do have to have the ability to encumber all the funds since we are technically starting the project this fiscal year. Other than that, I'm very excited. I know I've been up in this council a lot and talking about this project, and we're excited to get it rolling now. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kurt. Any questions from council? I've asked so many questions over the years on this. So, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crago.
Thank you. Still full of questions. The next item, we have the furniture, but I do see it is a part of the proposed encumbrances as I look at that, how it's delineated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Second thing is, I'm already thinking about, how is it going to be used and kind of programming. And I know that I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but is this something that we envision that our recreation department will need to kind of program or play a role in renting out, whether it's ice skates and have we thought about how do we have that capacity to do all that? How will that work? But just as I'm thinking of the big picture, thinking about kind of how it's going to be used.
Certainly. As one of our standards or goals with this project was to make it a 4-season project. So programming was an important discussion. Originally, we had thought there would be opportunity to contract at least the winter activities out to a contractor. Recreation, city management went through a lot of discussion with that and decided that it was actually best to operate the facility solely through the recreation department. So the recreation department is gearing up to be able to provide the programming, offer the ice skating rental, and operate the facility underneath the recreation.
Okay, excellent. One final question, and maybe I missed it in here, but are we about 2-3 months behind what we initially were? So are we thinking if we can get it on December or January? Is that kind of the timeline?
So we are about 3 months behind the original proposed schedule because of the additional environmental work we had to do. However, some steps that this council has taken, we've secured and started designing the mass timbers. That was an important step. We secured Service and those what we call critical path items, the condensers and everything for the ice. Gleason is looking at the schedule and projecting possibly the end of this year or end of January for completion. once we're able to award a contract, they'll able to start signing on their subcontractors, and we'll be able to get a firmer schedule. But like I said, we are trying very hard not to have that 3-month delay impact this project greatly.
Good questions. Additional questions? Like I said, I feel like I've asked questions on this for years at this point, in a good way. So I'm going to move I-5 Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Troy Civic Center Pavilion Construction, and Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, Approval to Expend Budgeted Funds, Pavilion Construction Administration, and Budget Amendment, as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm jumping ahead. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're right. I was wrong. So moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-5 as read into the record or printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. It's also something we've discussed a lot. I see Councilmember Hoderick has turned on her video. Councilmember Hoderick, do you have some discussion?
I just wanted to say, appreciate, this has been a long time coming, and yet when we finally got the ball rolling, the amount of work that's gone on to keep us moving along, even with hurdles that we've been facing the past, 6 months, it seems like. This is something this community has wanted for, I think we can safely say, decades. It's been a conversation that's permeated. I wish I was there to actually register my vote, because I'm excited that we get to proceed, and that we've made this work. And I look forward to the ribbon cutting, and if I was there, I would be voting yes. And I just really want to express my appreciation for everyone involved. Earlier presenter Mark Adams was talking about teamwork. This has been teamwork for many, many, many years. And, I think we're finally going to maybe pull this off and pull it together. And it's a very positive moment. So thank you. Thank you, DPW Director Bovenseep, for just keeping on with it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Councilmember Hoderick. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga.
Thank you, Mayor. So I recognize that today it's a very important vote. We're constructing something that it is big and it's important. And so I had a moment of just this weekend wanting to step back to make sure I understand very well and can communicate to folks how do we get here and what is the why behind what we're doing. And I had a great conversation with City Manager Miller on that. And I was going back to, we had this slide that you always opened up presentations with, the Green Space Subcommittee talking about the Troy Civic Center must be considered an area for community interaction, and the development of our Troy Civic Center being the central legacy, showpiece, and evidence of our planning for tomorrow. So that came out of a very diverse, wonderful community group that was really, that has for years and years been passionate about the civic space. And I've always longed to see how can we bring families and people of all ages into this space and engaging. And I know it came out of citizen surveys that asked for it, and was reminded that ice skating actually, because I was asking questions, how do we get to ice skating? But that was something that rose to the top in recreation surveys and surveys that we did with the community. And I'm also reminded of the why behind what we're doing, and that is something I was speaking about recently on this idea of the power of the civic commons, because this is a civic common, our space that we have, this public space that is ours as residents, as taxpayers, and it's a public space that we're bringing residents together in a time when there is a lot of dislocation, distrust, disconnection, and it creates those opportunities to build that sort of bridging capital to connect people. So I'm reminded that is the power behind what we're doing, because this is no small thing, and I take it very seriously, what we're doing tonight, but excited about all of its potential, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga. Well put. Additional discussion points or comments? I'll just have a couple. Also, as I've asked a lot of questions over the years about this, I've said a lot about this project over the years, so I'll try to narrow it down a little bit. I'm obviously very excited to support this project and have been for a long time, and I'm very excited that the award is going to a Troy-based company. I think that's a really good thing for our community, and so I'm thankful for Gleason for being qualified #1, but also being here and representing our city so well on that front. In 2017, we had a charter amendment in this community about the Civic Center property, and there was a lot of anger and concern throughout our residents. And, you know, one of the main takeaways for me dating back to that time was that people in this community generally want our Civic Center campus to be for community use, everyone to have the opportunity to go there. And I think today, being able to approve this project and seeing this being built over the next, 15 minutes, we're running out of time for this season, it seems like, but we can do it. The concept that we can, I know that there are people who are both in favor of the charter amendment and opposed to the charter amendment that are very enthusiastic about this project. And I think that says a lot about a good community response or good city response to a difficult time in our city, frankly, for a number of reasons, but as it related to that charter amendment specifically. So I love to see that, and we've seen, you know, the Gene M. Stein Community Park be built. This is an expansion of that park. Again, we know our residents, like you mentioned, Mayor Pro Tem, there's a focus in surveys and throughout the community in general, you know, people want recreation, they want community gathering spaces, and it's wonderful to see this come to fruition in this respect. So I am also mindful of, this is a big capital project in our city, probably the biggest the city's faced in a number of years. And it is a weighty decision, and it's an important one, but after decades of, you know, community support and longing for something like this, it's very exciting tonight to be able to vote in favor of it and to see it progress finally. So, of course, we'll be supporting it. And with that, I'll ask for the vote from Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Oh, that's all of us. Used to it being a little bit longer. I know that Ellen wants to vote yes, and I'm pretty sure Councilmember Hamilton would too. So motion carries. Thank you, Kurt, and thank you to the Gleason as they embark on this exciting new adventure here in Troy. Next up is I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia and NCPA Cooperative Purchasing Agreements and Bid Waiver, Troy Pavilion and Office Furnishings, also introduced by our Public Works Director, Kurt Bovensieck.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, we tried to squeeze it all into one memo. It was just too much. So we separated it out. And as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, the just most recent award in the budget amendment does cover the expense of the furnishings. One of our guiding principles as we were designing this project is we wanted it to be very, very high quality and world class, if you will. Anyone going to this knew that we didn't go to the local big box store and buy the furnishings. So that included the furniture. We were very cognizant of looking at sustainable furniture, furniture that can support all 4 seasons, and furniture that can actually be stored when it doesn't need to be used. For that reason, we are suggesting several different manufacturers and distributors to purchasing the site furnitures that will achieve all those goals. I will mention there is a portion of the furniture that is not on a cooperative and will require a bid waiver. Again, though, this is to have consistency throughout the furniture. We did our best to try to find the furnishings that complement each other and that were on a cooperative, but unfortunately, some of those furnishings weren't on a cooperative. And putting those out to bid wouldn't match that same consistency feel that we were looking for.
Thank you. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga.
Thank you, Mayor. So I read in here that OHM, and it sounds like yourself, you got to see some of these samples. Is that correct? So thumbs up for trusting your judgment?
I have looked at more furnishings than I would like to admit, but yes, we saw a lot of examples. We had manufacturers actually sending in samples, you know, not the whole piece of furniture, but samples of what the furniture is going to be made out of. Yes.
And I recognize it's not just the office furnishings with all steel, it's also bike racks and benches and
yes.
receptacles. So good. Trust your judgment.
Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia and NCPA Cooperative Purchasing Agreements and Bid Waiver, Troy Pavilion and Office Furnishings as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia and NCPA Cooperative Purchasing Agreements and Bid Waiver, Troy Pavilion and Office Furnishings, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next up is I-7, proclamation requesting funding for the I-75 sound wall, and that'll be introduced by Assistant City Manager Meg Schubert, who I should formally welcome officially to the table up here as the Assistant City Manager.
Thank
Go ahead.
you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So as we heard tonight and at our last council meeting and at multiple times in the past, we've had a number of residents who are expressing concerns about the effects of the noise that they're hearing from I-75. The Michigan Department of Transportation had recently wrapped an additional study which identified 2 potential noise barriers within the city that met both their feasibility and reasonable standards to be completed. The projects estimate about $12 million. $2 million has already been set aside in the budget, and so there's an appropriation needed to the MDOT budget for about $10 million in order for these projects to come to fruition. And so tonight in front of you, you'll see a proclamation that's going to call upon the governor and our state representatives to support the residents of Troy in their effort to obtain this appropriation of $10 million to the MDOT budget, which would then allow for the construction of noise barrier 10 and noise barrier 11 within the city of Troy. As we find that is in the best interest of the Troy residents who are impacted by the adverse effects of noise from I-75.
Thank you, Meg. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to ask you to run through all the folks that you're thinking to send it to, but to me, that's one of the most important things is who this, to whose hands is it going to get into to see? And so I guess my hope would be, are we planning to send it to the appropriation chairs, both on the Senate and the House side? Is that something, and are those in the list? I hope so.
Absolutely, yes. And specifically in our proclamation here, we have Senator Michael Weber, Representative Sharon McDonald, Representative Tom Kuhn, U.S. Senator Gary Peters, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, U.S. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and U.S. Congresswoman Haley Stevens.
Additional questions? And you want to move this one?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-7 proclamation requesting funding for the I-75 sound wall as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga, that we approve I-7 proclamation requesting funding for the I-75 sound wall as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? I'll only say that I haven't spoken with the 2 senators, but everybody, and actually even the governor. I've spoken with everybody on that list almost, and our local representatives they said this is another tool that will help them have support for the funding request with the appropriations chair and everybody, right? So I'm happy to approve this tonight and keep that charge going forward. So, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I did have some comments I wanted to share, and also just wanted to start by thanking very much Michigan Municipal League. We are a member of this entity that fights for cities, not just in any one individual city, but I've been grateful to be able to go to them to get some advice on how to tackle this, and who we know that our representatives, they are all supportive, they're all fighting for us, but what else can be done? And so grateful to have gotten some input around the appropriation chairs and folks that we should be going to. But just wanted to share some thoughts that came to mind around why, like in my journey with this, and why this is important, why I'm fighting for this, and why I want to support this proclamation, and to get this 10 million to start. I know we need more, but to start here in Troy. Is I was imagining, and I think we all should imagine our homes right now. Like imagine your home. Whether it is your forever home, or whether it's your home that you bought to raise your family in, or whether it's your home that you're retired and this is probably going to be your last home, and you've put a lot of your savings into choosing this is a place where you're going to settle. And we know Troy is a place of thoroughfares. That's why Troy is the city it is because there's roads everywhere, and that helps you to get to where you need to be, and that's great for businesses. But say you have a house, and we're all near, I'm not far also from some very loud roads, but suddenly after you bought that house, you saw a major highway get widened in front of it, and you're told nothing could be done about it. And all the trees and brush that helped to take away that sound, it was just leveled. Nothing can be done. And then when you heard there might be something that could be done, oh, there's no money. This 10 million, we don't have it, it's not there. And that's then where I start hearing the stories. People then, you get into a situation, if you're able to, you try to sell your house. And I know that there's examples of that. You struggle to get the market rate you want for it, and I've heard cases where some have had to end up selling to private equity. I would ask, what does that do? What does that do in a community when you have private equity starting to buy homes in neighborhoods and areas? And then that's where then I think about Troy, who we are. We are an economic bulwark in Oakland County. We are an economic powerhouse. And if our economy and our housing stock, if those things come into question, then that's where I would ask, and especially at a time where we're thinking, if you think the governor, all the talk at Mackinac, the big policy conference was, how do we grow our state? How do we grow our population? How do we make sure that we have the housing and we have the economy we need? Well, if you can't grow Troy, because it is the one city that is really growing in Oakland County, if you can't grow Troy, you're not going to grow the state of Michigan. And so that's where I've come to this issue, is I have to fight for this issue. Because I have to fight for Troy and have to fight for Troy to keep going. Because again, Troy's not going to grow, Michigan's not going to grow. So it's a bigger issue, and that's where I hope our appropriation leaders, because I know our representatives, they care, but those appropriation leaders who are going to make these decisions, they will keep this 10 million, and this will be in the budget, and we will get those walls. And that's why then I'm proud to support this.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, the vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed. Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga.
Thank you, Mayor. I cannot find it right now, but there is an item about our banking, Comerica being our bank, and just our CFO writing on the decision to make sure that we're going to stay with Comerica. And I think that that's important because as people have been talking about the economic climate, people have been talking about the hope and trust and faith in their banks. And so I trust, if that is our decision, I have all the faith. That says a lot about, it makes me feel confident in where we are in Troy, where we are around the banking sector and the banks that we're using. So just wanted to call that out because I think there's economic significance in that piece.
Thank you. The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, all have been approved. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. I actually have two to announce this evening. K1 is an announcement of a public hearing on June 26, 2023, adoption of the Brownfield Redevelopment Plan number 11 for the Village of Troy Development, parcels number 88-20-15-201-033 and number 88-20-15-201-046 off of East Lake Road. And K2 is a memorandum, proposed additions to Chapter 107, Traffic and Motor Vehicle Code. And there's a memo in there that has the proposed changes. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, please reach out to city administration prior to the meeting. And of course, up and through the meeting. All right, that concludes the memorandums and future council agenda items. Next up is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have one person signed up this evening, Dale Murish. Please come forward.
Hello, Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting me speak here. I have a comment on the pavilion that's being built for $10 million. It seemed like it had a lot of contingency funds in it. The 10 or 15% seems like a lot, but then maybe I'm not used to seeing these kind of numbers in the past. And also the I-75 noise. Are there several neighborhoods that are not going to be covered by this $10 million, these two walls? It's going to be a partial solution then. That's unfortunate. Okay, I'd like to talk about honeybees, bicycles, and safety. The honeybees are interesting. I had a estate planning meeting with the lady that does beekeeping for a hobby, and she said for $2,300 they can do like a community beehive and all that kind of stuff. It sounded really interesting because the bees and the other insects that pollinate need, like dandelions are good, and others are good as well, flowers and stuff. Anyway, it sounded pretty neat, and I visited the youth center section of the library, and there's a nice place that could have a glass piece in the window next to the emergency exit, so that the kids coming to the library could see that and learn about honeybees. Bicycles. I enjoy bike riding. It's my hobby. And Beach Road is now freshly paved. Thank you very much for getting that done. And it's still pretty bumpy on Kurtz Boulevard where I live. But otherwise, my road bike is waiting to get on the road. And safety. I carried this backpack into the library, all around the library, and into this council chamber. And I know we have policemen here, and they're here for our safety, but there should be some sort of inspection for backpacks and other items. The community center weight room has a requirement or a sign up that said, "Please, no backpacks here. We put them in, or no bags hanging here." They should be put in a locker, free lockers. But that's the only thing. That seems like some, heaven forbid, that we could have a mass shooting here in Troy, but it seems like maybe that should be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for council administration to respond or reply. Any response this evening? All right. There are no council referrals this evening. We move on to reports. Any comments on any of the reports in the packet from council? Okay.
I have a question
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. There was I think we've talked quite a bit in the budget session about TFAC and needing to start community engagement. And I think that in that section, it had referred down that there was something around community engagement down below, but I don't recall seeing it. And so just wanted to confirm that, we're working on that. And I think in my mind, I know I'm just one person, is that this is the ideal summer to really start being able to dive into some sort of community engagement plan to be able to give feedback, because otherwise it's only open in the summer and then it just kicks the can down the road. So I don't, I recall it being referenced, but then as I was reading, I didn't recall seeing more on that, but maybe I missed something and it's in progress.
That's a good question.
Point well taken. We'll make sure that we do that this summer.
My understanding is there is a community engagement plan forthcoming at some point from our new director, so I'm sure that'll be included. But
and there's more, part of this process is decentralizing our overall community engagement into more centralized under Tory. So that's kind of being worked on right now. In fact, I think they had a meeting today on it.
Very good. Thank you. All right, next up is council comments. Council comments. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of just want to make a belated comment about something that was on our consent agenda. Just to make sure I get the correct one. J4D. I just wanted to point out, for those who don't know, most people are aware that we passed the library millage, and included in the most recent library millage was plan to move forward with renovating our library. We had some setbacks that were unfortunate due to the cost being exceeding, as it often is in this post-COVID era. Everything is way more expensive. But I'm just very excited to see that we're finally moving forward with some renovations for the library. Unfortunately, our library director is already gone, but just wanted to point that out and make everybody aware that that is definitely moving forward, and very excited to see it happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Additional council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle.
Thank you, Mayor. I know it was a very rich weekend, a lot of activities. I'll let my colleagues share a little bit more about the Run for Nature and all of that, but I just wanted to take a moment. So this is something that I think really speaks to the heart of what Troy is about. And I was speaking at the Rotary event this weekend, and they have, one of their values is service above self. And I've always said, I think there's very much in Troy, that is what Troy is about. There's a spirit of volunteerism and really putting others above yourself. And one example of that I want to give a shout out to, this is a Troy Youth Soccer League, and so also Councilmember Brooks, her daughters have, I know, been involved in it as well. My son, it was his first year. He just had his last game, and I just really want to call out and commend, even on this brochure, and we had visitors, Coach Paul, I believe it was, came in and spoke. An all-volunteer league since 1974, all-volunteer league. That is the coaches, that is the refs. And I just really want to thank Kevin Kim and Vrinder Singh. They were the team managers, team coaches for my son's team. And they have full-time demanding jobs. But the way that they put this time and investing in these kids, because it's not just about sport. It's about camaraderie. It's about learning, even when you lose, like learning how to move through that and supporting one another. And just the fact that these are all volunteers and the whole program, it just blows me away. And I so much appreciate that about Troy. Second thing was, some might know the indoor pool at the Troy Community Center is closed this week. There's annual cleaning and work on that, and I appreciate that. And I just want to give a shout out to folks, want to thank Recreation. So there is this opportunity that, if you are an annual pass holder, you can go and swim at the outdoor pool at TFAC, and was grateful to be able to try that and do that. And so just want to let all my swimmer friends know that they can do that, and I'll be spreading the word. So really appreciate that during this week that folks can use the Aquatic Center outdoors.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle. Additional council comments? I feel like I need to because you brought it up. But yesterday was the Run for Nature at the Nature Center. Actually, it was at the Troy Farm. But I appreciate all who attended, all the volunteers who worked so hard to make that a successful event. It's always important, I think, in our community for us to support our Nature Society and our Nature Center. We really are fortunate to have that 100 acres in the city of Troy that provides so much peace and tranquility for a lot of people. I talked a little bit yesterday, about running's great for physical health. It's also great for mental health, and mental health has become such a focus in our country. And to combine physical and mental health and nature, it just seemed like a perfect fit. So thank you to the Nature Center for providing that for our community, and thank you to all the sponsors and those who helped make that a success. So thanks for that reminder. I appreciate that. I think that's it for me. No other additional comments tonight. Seems like there's always something I could talk about, but, Councilmember Hoderick, I forgot you were here. Go ahead.
I am still here. I just wanted to point out that a very important conference took place in Troy, the 6th annual North American Active Assailant Conference was last week. It's a 3-day conference with 1 day for elected officials, appointed officials, to have a special focus for what they should be considering, and then 2 days for specifically the content is geared to first responders, police, fire, EMS, with a smattering of additional attendees, such as myself. I was there this year. I know other council members have attended in the past. Mayor Baker, you have been there. I've seen additional city officials. And in a community that consistently tells us public safety needs to be the #1 priority, while I don't want to bring up a difficult topic, I do want to just note that so many professionals, not only in our city, but throughout our region. We're a member of, our police department's a member of OCTAC, and there's a regional focus. We heard at this conference from experts from events that have occurred across the nation, and with very, very candid debriefs. And of course, this year, it also included debriefs from East Lansing and Oxford. In addition to it being valuable content, and I know we all take that information away and bring it back to our work and policy setting, I just want to give an extra shout out to the Troy Police Department as I watched them play host. And the extra work that they do to help enable this important conference to occur. And for those that sometimes might think, hey, are they really, is the city council, is our city administration, is the city of Troy focused on public safety? It's so valuable to me. I always indicate it in surveys or give that input. It is ongoing, and this is just one of many examples that I saw last week, and I wanted to point it out.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Appreciate that. Additional council comments? All right. There's nobody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We have no closed session, so we are adjourned.